afternoon. Welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Scrutiny and Audit Committee. I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I have agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. For any members of the public watching, please note that the public committee reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. We'll start with apologies and substitutions.
Thank you, Convener. We have apologies from Councillor Gall and Councillor Melville.
Okay, thank you. And any declarations of interest or statements of transparency? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we'll take that as none. Item 3 is the minutes. So the previous meeting was the 16th of September. Is that a correct record? Okay, thank you for that. And then the special meeting on the 23rd of September. Is that a correct record? That was the meeting on the accounts. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, scrutiny, Scottish Fire and Rescue Quarterly Monitoring Report. For a period of 1st July to 30th September, and in the absence of Area Commander Brian Todd, we've got Paul Thompson to give the report, and we also have Grant Taylor, who is the Angus Community Action Team member. He's here as well. So over to Paul Thompson, sorry. Over you go.
Thank you, Convener. Good afternoon, everyone. LSO Todd sends his apologies, currently off duty unwell, and so as such there'll be no strategic update today. What I'll do is, I'm critically aware that you've all had the report for a number of weeks. I'll give a brief overview and then open it for questions. So overall it's a positive report with a drop in overall incidents and in particular a significant drop in deliberate and outdoor fires, despite the fact that during this period we obviously had the school holidays and we would have expected to maybe have seen an uptick, especially with the good weather. Accidental dwelling fires remain at the lowest point that they have been over the last 4 years, and dwelling casualties are much the same. Details on that for the quarter: there was 1 non-fatal casualty and reporting 0 fatal casualties within accidental dwelling fires. Home fire safety visits continue to be through referrals and are prioritised with high priority being dealt with by the Community Action Team and local crews, and the reporting for home fire safety visits and the app for partners. I've got some positive news on that is looking more positive. And will be up and running the way it should be sometime soon. There were 14 RTCs attended within Q2 with 9 non-fatal casualties and sadly reporting 1 fatal casualty during that quarter. Deliberate fires, as I said, dropped in the last quarter. There was a significant push by the Community Action Team and local crews on educational initiatives and fire-related antisocial behaviour activity, with a focus on developing a Safe Angus initiative to target new S1 pupils at the 8 secondary schools across Angus. UFAS, there's a real focus on UFAS and supporting duty holders across the area through education and support for duty holders, and the property types of the incidents are detailed on pages 8 and 10 of the report. As always, I would like to note the excellent community work and educational partnership work that was completed and indeed is ongoing within the area. Between Q1 and Q2, I held the first joint Angus managers group within the area with specialist day-related staff and community fire station watch commanders looking to share best practice in the area and support across the Angus area. One of my station commanders, Liam Stewart, is going to take the lead on that with a view to look at rolling initiatives that are working well in particular station grounds out to other stations within the area. And on that, I'm happy to take questions, Convener.
Okay, thanks very much indeed for that. Questions from member. I've got Councillor Bell and Councillor Proctor, then Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Really helpful to read this. I'm pleased to see the number of outdoor fires have reduced, but I'm still obviously concerned around the level that we're seeing, grass, crop, possibly wild or rough camping related. I'm not 100% sure. So I wondered if you could give me a bit on that. And I'm really grateful to the support that we had over the summer around issues in the Lintrathen backwater area. And also, if it's possible, could we drill down a little bit into the humanitarian call-outs? There's 7, so it's not huge, but I'm sure they're really important for the people that are involved. I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about what lies behind that as well, please. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. With regards to the last part of the question, the reporting system doesn't give me the full detail, but I'd be happy for you to email me directly, and I'll see if I can get the detail of each of those incidents for you at a later date. Regards the grass fires, there was over the quarter, I would say, a significant drop in what we would expect to see, especially over that period, as I've said. And from Q1, in liaison with Grant, actually, I know that Grant and the Community Action Team and the teams at Kirriemuir have reached out, and support is forthcoming to target those areas that you mentioned. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Proctor.
Thank you very much, Convener. Thank you very much for your very positive report. I've really got 2 questions, if that's all right. First of all, the false alarms. Is there any breakdown between false alarms with good intent and maybe malicious? So you may have somebody who genuinely reports something, it turns out to be a false alarm, and then of course you have the malicious. Is there any sort of split between the two, or do you just lump them all together?
Thank you for the question. So false alarms, as the way that the report churns them out at this time, is different from the way it was before, and it would have broken them down into that more detailed. Now it kind of separates them out into UFAS, which are unwanted fire alarm signals, which tend to be either through technology being fitted in the wrong place, so that's heat detectors in the wrong place or smoke detectors in the wrong place, or indeed just human behaviour. But they are not malicious as such. We try to educate and drive those down, because obviously we're trying to reduce the impact on blue light journeys, road safety for ourselves and the public, and the focus of the community firefighters being able to respond to actual incidents. Again, I would ask if you want to reach out after the meeting, I can see if I can speak to colleagues within the reporting system to see just how many malicious activations there were, and I could certainly try and get those numbers for you.
Okay, thanks very much. And my second question was the specialist appliance that we've got based up in Kirriemuir in my ward. I know that can be deployed throughout the country. Is this the case? I mean, has it been used to the full? Has it been deployed out with Kirriemuir and Dean area?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, so the Rapid Response Unit carries ultra high pressure lance on it, and you're correct in pointing out that is viewed as a national asset. There are assets with the same capability to the north and to the south of that, but I'll maybe lean on Grant here. I think from memory, certainly, I can think of the vehicle and the lance in particular being used at least two incidents for that purpose, because despite the fact that it has the ultra high pressure lance, it also carries out the duties of a secondary appliance to go to secondary fires. It has that capability also, and it can also assist at road traffic collisions as well. It has a limited amount of rescue equipment.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor MacDonald, and then Councillor Cowdy.
Thank you, Convener. I'm a member of the Road Safety Member Officer Working Group that's looking, at how we look at our speed limits and things like that, and how we sort of manage our roads. The 14 road traffic collisions in the quarter, decent, I would imagine, sort of figure. Obviously, there's a tragic one, which is not good. In terms of the things that you go out to and see, most of these, I would imagine, are on our rural country roads. Do you guys report at all on any sort of impacts in the towns, sort of in our sort of areas that we might be looking at 20s? Or would it only be reported on in the sort of sense that you've gone out and sort of rescued someone or looked on it? And sort of just wondered about the impacts of, we're looking at sort of spending or potentially spending a bit of money on looking at road safety in our towns, but actually, does the data suggest it might be better served looking at other options out with that? It's maybe not a fair question. And I've got a second question, Bill, if that's okay, after that.
Thanks for your question. I would say that from my experience and given the area that we're reporting on, most of the incidents out of the 14, if not all, have happened out with the town, and so traffic calming measures within town centres would probably have little impact on that, because we're probably looking at more behavioural issues than the measures that 20 mile an hour speed limits would imply, because it would have no effect on the majority of the incidents that we're reporting on.
Thanks for that. Sorry, Bill.
I'll indulge you with the second question, yeah.
Just consistency with Councillor Proctor. The second question, we recently had a fire in Carnoustie, and an unusual circumstance where Carnoustie's appliance couldn't make it out. I'm just wondering if we've got an update as to where we are with Balmossy. It might be not with your remit here, I'm not sure, but I think we're going to find out more about the consultation and that. Just wondering if you have any details on when we're likely to expect that, and obviously if there's an impact of if the Carnoustie volunteer crew can't get out, we've got to rely on Arbroath, Dundee, and obviously if Balmossy's not functional. So just wondering if we've got any updates there.
Thanks for the question. So there is no decision being made yet, and I was informed that a letter had went out to all elected members for the area to inform you that the decision to put it back to consider and give all of the information that came in, due diligence and scrutiny, is all we've been told at this moment in time is the start of next year now instead of December. So no decisions have been made. And with regards to the availability, I'm glad that you highlighted that it is unusual for Carnoustie not to be available. It's part of the on-call duty system is that firefighters can and will book on and book off when they are available. We have very good on-call availability across all of Angus stations. But one of the benefits of Scottish Fire and Rescue Service is that we can lean to next nearest stations and mobilise very quickly. So I'm sure that there was an attendance at the incident that you're talking about in Carnoustie.
Okay, thanks, Freddie.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I had quite a specific question around section 5, which is the non-fire casualties. Just in the breakdown at the bottom of that page, you explained there were 3 fatal casualties. One of them being an RTC and the others from assisting others and affecting entry incident types. I just wondered, obviously, I'm sure it's sensitive information, but for anyone who doesn't understand what those categories mean, is it basically needing to get into a property where someone's having a medical emergency, for example?
Thanks for the question. So yeah, in some instances that will be the case, and if it's affecting entry or assisting other agencies, we will be going out at the request of either Police Scotland or Scottish Ambulance Service, where they have attended on information received by their own agencies, and they're unable to gain entry. They don't carry the tools. We will assist. Our reporting systems changed, so I think up until about 6 months ago, we wouldn't have necessarily reported those as fatalities as part of our attendance because it would be a medical emergency, but the reporting has now changed so that if our crews attend and there is a fatality, we will look to put support mechanisms in place for our crews, and so we will record that as part of that mechanism now. So we'll record all fatalities that we are involved with. That makes sense.
Okay, on you go.
Thank you. It's just to double check that you're saying you'll be putting support mechanisms in place to support the people from your team who might have come into contact with that fatality and hence need support. Yeah.
Correct.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Not seeing any. Okay, any comments? Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks, Convener. I just want to highlight, I know it's been touched on already, but the reduction in deliberate fires. At the last scrutiny and audit, I kind of highlighted that the data wasn't really reflecting the measures that would put in to try and counteract the fires, and when would it filter through. So it's great to see that this month that the data is really showing that big reduction we've been looking for, and all that work that's been put in with the school visits and that is finally paying off. So well done on that. And also good to see the community work going on at Arbroath High School around the cardiac arrests. And I also found the comments interesting that were mentioned regarding the 20-mile-hour zones mentioned to Councillor MacDonald today. So thanks again for that work around the deliberate fires. It really is good to see those big reductions in the 2 Arbroath wards especially. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no further comments. Okay, we'll just like to thank Councillor Beattie. Your tiny yellow hand is just about invisible to my eye. On you go. Sorry for that. I think you're muted, Councillor Beattie.
Yeah, sorry, my laptop was playing up there after the audio. Councillor Shepherd touched on it there. I just want to thank the community team and training that they're doing in schools and colleges. It's a really difficult skill to master, and it's good to see that our pupils and students are getting that skill, because it's not easy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Proctor.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I just reiterate what my colleagues have just said there. I think it's really great to see the CAT programmes, particularly schools, etc., going on, and long may that continue.
Thank you for that. Thanks, Councillor Proctor. So yeah, thanks very much for the report. I think it's a pretty good report. I mean, the incidents are low, and always the community work that you do is well appreciated. So you'll be staying for the police report as well. That's grand. Okay, so we've been asked to note and comment on the report. So we're happy we've done that. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to item 5, which is Police Scotland, and we've got Chief Superintendent Nicola Russell and Chief Inspector Grace Ewing with us. So over to Chief Superintendent.
Thanks so much, Convener, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to present the Q2 report, which I'll hand over to Grace shortly for, and she'll give a couple of updates. Just prior to doing that, though, just a couple of things I'd like to highlight, not within this reporting quarter, but for awareness of members. We had an open day just a couple of weeks ago at the new police station in Forfar, and I'd just like to publicly thank Angus Council, councillors, our communities, and all our officers for bearing with us while we transitioned to the new site, but also for all your support while we've done that. I'm delighted to report that that station's up and operational. Officers are really seeing the benefit, and we've been members of the public, so a really positive move for us in Angus and particularly here in Forfar. The other thing I'd just like to provide a really high-level update on, because I will come out with some more detailed comms in relation to this, is in relation to our operating model across Tayside. So nationally across Police Scotland, we are looking at how we deploy our officers, and over the previous few months within C Division, which is Forth Valley, we've undertaken a review of an operating model which we're calling Policing for Our Communities. That ultimately is about enhancing our community policing model and supporting the delivery of the Chief Constable's 2030 vision around safer communities, supported victims, less crime and a thriving workforce. Tayside and Fife Division have started work in terms of what that will mean for us, and we will look to launch that in the first quarter of next year. Very high level update, because we haven't made any decisions as to what that looks like, but I absolutely will come out to you all with appropriate comms and highlight what it means for you. But the point I would make is it's about enhancing our community provision and supporting services of policing locally. So nothing else from me, Convener. I'll hand over to Grace, and she'll highlight the elements of the report.
Okay, thank you.
Afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Convener. As previously agreed, I don't intend reading through every section of the report this quarter, and I'll assume that you've all had time to read and digest it yourselves prior to today. But I will go through and highlight certainly the performance on a page, at page 40 there. So starting with our Group 1 crimes of violence, there have been 8 robberies recorded within Angus in Q2, which is an encouraging reduction from 14 in Q1 and down from the 11 in the same period last year, 2024. The detection rate for these crimes in Q2 is 75%, roughly similar to last year's Q2 and up on Q1, which was 57%. In respect of the serious assaults, there was 12 this quarter, down from 15 in the previous quarter and 17 from the same period last year. So overall, in relation to Group 1, a really positive position for us, which hopefully offers a high level of reassurance. Moving into the Group 2, the sexual crimes, this year to date, we show a 26.7% decrease in recorded offences from the same period last year and a 7.3% decrease on the 5-year average. That drop in recorded offending is further improved by an increase in detections against the 5-year average. Of the 85 Group 2 crimes, there were 55 complainers, again, as I mentioned last quarter, highlighting the tragic reality that most complainers are likely to be victims of multiple offences, mostly perpetrated by persons who are known to them, either through a domestic or family relationship. And almost half of the reported rapes were non-recent, therefore not a true reflection of the current offending in this quarter, with only one of those taking place in a public setting, which was also a non-recent report. Moving into the Group 4 crimes, it will come as no surprise that incidents of antisocial behaviour continue to rise, with an increase of 291 incidents from last year to date. Our community officers have worked really hard over the summer period to engage with youth, to encourage involvement at local holiday clubs and to become involved in diversionary projects across Angus. They also carried out engagement with local residents to encourage reporting of local issues promptly, to curb any offending at the earliest opportunity. And where necessary, joint visits were carried out at problematic addresses, with various supports being offered to young families who struggled during the holiday periods away from the routine of the school day. Working in conjunction with the antisocial behaviour team, hotspot areas were targeted with preventative messaging relating to county lines, antisocial behaviour and drugs use, highlighting reporting mechanisms through the respective agencies, and together with partners we distributed over 1,000 leaflets. Moving into shoplifting, this continues to remain a prevalent topic, but we have also seen a positive reduction in this area, with 72 less crimes recorded from last year to date. There was good work highlighted throughout my document, with 18 offences being attributed to one prolific offender, and sadly this is commonplace with some of our local career criminals. However, officers remain dedicated to pursuing lines of inquiry and gathering sufficient evidence to present these individuals before the courts, and if not remanded, special bail conditions requested in an effort to prevent repeat offending. I have received high praise for local officers who have recently been dedicated to proactive patrols in Arbroath High Street, providing reassurance to the retailers there and acting as a deterrent to offenders. This high visibility presence is something we will continue to commit to as we move into the festive period. On page 52, I mentioned the results of recent surveys we conducted. The strategic direction of policing is driven by research, insight and engagement to enable the service to build a robust understanding of the drivers of trust and confidence and what is needed to enable positive experiences with people who contact us for help. It's therefore encouraging that the vast majority of respondents, 81% of the Your Police survey from the Angus Local Authority area, intimated that they felt safe within their local communities, with 62% believing their local officers were friendly and approachable. The clear messages received were that the public value officers who show understanding, compassion and listen to individuals' needs. The values and behaviours demonstrated in these positive interactions were seen to be the core drivers of public confidence, alongside visibility, accessibility, presence and community engagement. As the Area Commander, I will continue to maintain these high standards, always seeking to improve in this space of public engagement and public experience and interactions with our local officers. Not contained within today's document, but a topic that I know has interested a number of you, is the recent Lord Advocate's changes to corroboration. These are fairly big and technical, especially in the context of sexual offences, so I will only briefly give you a small insight to explain what it means for the investigation of crime and what are the benefits brought about by these changes. Firstly, corroboration is still required, but how it is used is shifted. It may not be necessary to always corroborate every separate element of an offence. We now have the ability to use evidence of a victim's distress observed by a third party shortly after the incident, which can now corroborate a victim's account. This means that two statements from the same person, if framed properly through timing and context, might count as two sources of evidence before they would have historically, where they would not have before. Historically, two statements from the same person could not corroborate each other. The reason for bringing about this change is that the previous requirement to corroborate every fact was creating barriers to justice, particularly for victims. By modernising the interpretation of corroboration, the Lord Advocate hoped to make more cases prosecutable, especially those of rape and sexual offences, particularly for those whose trauma does not present as visible distress or who cannot produce independent witnesses. This change aligns more with how real life works, a victim's immediate reaction plus their early statement. It is long-awaited reform that addresses barriers victims previously faced, making the system more flexible and improving access to justice. There's nothing else that I want to cover in today's report, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Bell, Councillor Gregg. Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much, both of you. Today is the first day of 16 days of action against gender-based violence, and it's also the launch of it's White Ribbon Day as well. And I think that's really significant when you look at the numbers in your reports around sexual crime, and the domestic abuse figures are really concerning, and domestic abuse offences up by 85%. That's massive. And the sexual crimes, well, I commend you on the detection rates increase. That's fantastic. And I also commend the women who are coming forward to report these crimes. I think that demonstrates a significant increase in confidence that people will be. I wanted to tie in, I guess it would be anecdotal, if you can give me an idea of how many of these cases also include things like social media harassment, apps that track women, around the coercive control, particularly under domestic abuse offences, where women's movements are effectively monitored, and it's like stalking, I guess. If you have anything at all on that, I would be really grateful. Thanks.
Thanks so much for your question, Councillor. Probably just a couple of things I'll highlight before I give Grace the opportunity to give some of that detail. Of course, what we don't do in these statistics is break down whether they are male or female victims. So these are overarching statistics, obviously, across the area. But having said that, quite clearly, any of these crimes are one too many, and we do recognise that. Yes, the correlation between the increased number of reports and public satisfaction would lead us to suggest that people feel more confident coming forward, but we absolutely can't take that as a given, and we work really hard with partners to ensure that there are a number of ways for people to disclose and report, and that our safeguarding measures are in place to support all victims of sexual crime. We probably don't have the specific details in terms of some of the things you're looking for, but Grace will touch on some of the wider work that we do have.
Yeah, just to point out, obviously the DASA offences over long periods of time, prolonged offending against a victim, that will undoubtedly pick up some of what you were referring to, the online abuse and stalking and harms in that space as well. So that will cover some of it, but that's something I can take forward and look at breaking down in the future.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Gregg and then Councillor Speed Online.
Thank you, Convener. So apologies for the noise that came from my phone. I was actually looking at Police Scotland social media, which was part of what I'm going to be answering with the question that I have here. So recently on your social media, and I've shared it myself on my own councillor page, was to do with the underreporting of domestic abuse within the LGBT community. So I think this kind of links in with both the sexual crime and also the domestic abuse sections that are in here, because I think in some cases the two might be quite closely linked. So for an underreporting perspective, in both for domestic abuse and sexual crimes within that context of LGBT, what sort of level do you feel that may be underrepresented by or is not being reported, and how that might reflect the figures that are here within your report?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. It's really difficult for us to understand what isn't reported when we don't have the data. What we do have, though, is really close partnership working with support agencies and services. And we recognise that not all victims of crime do want police involved. So we work really hard to ensure that when people want to report, they have a pathway in order to do that and they're supported. Specifically in terms of LGBTQ plus relationships, we do know that there's underreporting there, again with a number of protected characteristics in communities across Scotland. So again, there's a number of areas of work that we do with associations, with partners, trying to encourage reporting to ensure that there are third-party reporting opportunities, and again linking to our local partnerships and preventions team so that we can signpost and identify where we've got gaps. It's really difficult for me to tell you how many people aren't reporting, though, because it would be a best guess. What we obviously do have is our statistics that show our 5-year average, and then the breakdown. We haven't broken down any other protected characteristics within this report, and again that's something we can look at in terms of those factors, and we can come back to see what that looks like. But we know there's underreporting across all areas of domestic abuse, and we work really, really hard to encourage people to come forward, and we will do things on social media like highlight prison sentences, or where we've had proactive work to show people that, you know, if they do come forward, we will put everything that we have in order to bring all that evidence together for the court to make an assessment.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Speed, then Councillor Devine, Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Proctor, did you have a question? Okay, right. Okay, I'm not sure who was first, but Councillor Speed is definitely next.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Thanks for this report. We know that our high streets are struggling, and you know the rates of shoplifting on our high streets continue to be high. However, I am pleased to see the reduction, particularly on Arbroath High Street. And I know that that's been down to, you know, a lot of additional resource and support given to the businesses and shopkeepers within that area. I just wondered what the ongoing commitment is going to be, because clearly having presence and additional resource does help to bring those numbers down, and we want to keep seeing a reduction. So is there a commitment to continue to keep a focus on our high streets? And if there was any additional kind of, I guess, financial support or resource to continue to ensure our streets are safe, what kind of measures or interventions would you put in place?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, I just want to I absolutely do have that commitment to continue to have that high visibility presence within the high streets throughout Angus. We have spoken previously about the Retail Task Force that is now a national asset for us, and we have assistance from them looking at engagement with retailers, improving their response to their own security, giving them appropriate crime prevention advice, and also providing us with a bit of extra resource as and when they can to assist us with that high visibility presence across the high streets and doing that engagement and offering reassurance and acting as a deterrent to active shoplifters. So we have benefited from that national resource here locally. We do have that extra resource, and I know that's been felt in the high streets. Like I mentioned, I've had that feedback. In respect of any additional assistance that we could be given, we have really good partnerships and interventions engagements with the retailers for them to look at how they can improve their own security space in respect of CCTV, be it private or public. And that's something that we continue to be engagement with in respect of improving that security space as well in the private sector.
Councillor, I'd probably just add into that as well. You know, members will be aware of the request around funding from Police Scotland nationally into Scottish Government, and fundamentally the reality is that if the funding bids are provided to Police Scotland, then that will absolutely support our opportunity to prevent and detect crime on the front line. I highlighted the Chief Constable's 2030 vision and the 4 key priorities, and I've touched on as well our approach around enhancing our community model. All of these things are vital to ensure that our communities remain safe and that we prevent crime from happening in the first place. So that's a really, really key factor for us as an organisation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Convener. You mentioned county lines, and I was just wondering if you've come across cuckooing in Angus at all, because it is such a worrying thing when you know that there's a lot of vulnerable people around. They are obviously open to that, and it is very. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Councillor. We don't see it onto the same level that we do in other parts of the country here in Angus, but we're very alive to it. We have done a lot of work with partners and encourage that reporting from partners, from our housing officers, from our social work and social care partners as well, to be alive to what they're witnessing when they're out in the ground, and to feed that back into us, and we will act on any intel that's received to us in relation to taking any enforcement as and when we can, and making sure appropriate supports are in place for any victims.
Okay, thank you. Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. Again, much like the question about road safety earlier, we've seen a few sort of repeat incidents at sort of accident hotspots. I'm thinking of obviously the tragic events that we've had at Inverkeeler. Just for, as elected members, we get to sometimes know the process when we're highlighting where the public says there's an issue and the police work with the council. Can you sort of just give us an insight into how the Police Scotland works with the council in sort of areas like this to assess what is a problem area, how we as a local authority would then maybe want to make changes or not? And you know, I know historically we've looked at areas in Arbroath, or just outside Arbroath, like the Big Tree Bends, which was an accident, you know, hotspot, and that road was changed, the Brecon to Montrose Road. Is there just some sort of insight there? Because obviously we've got a good response from the fire service on this, so just a different sort of side to that.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Councillor. And Grace will touch on some of the local conversations that take place. But nationally, there's a road safety governance group that sits across Scotland, and we do look at our statistics, the tragic deaths on our roads, which again are far too high, and those that are seriously injured. And we will look at opportunities in terms of areas that we see repeat incidents or indeed fatalities. Our statistics are fed through into the Camera Safety Unit and into Scottish Government. The Camera Safety Unit can deploy anywhere across Tayside. So again, that is another prevention measure that we would look to put into areas where we see high levels or repeat incidents. And then more locally, Grace has conversations across the partnership in terms of repeat areas and areas where we might want to focus police attention or where we might need to look at diversion or activity that might prevent something from happening. But I'll let Grace touch on anything else that's local and relevant.
Yeah, thank you. We work closely with our road traffic colleagues and plan enforcement days around where I've had communications coming in from the likes of yourselves or members of the public reporting them through our normal reporting channels, be it online or through our control room. So we then respond to that, and wherever possible we'll put resource in those particular areas. We also, like the boss mentioned, have a number of preventative assets. We have the pop-up gyms, etc., that you've often seen in the more rural areas where we can't be all the time, but they're really effective, and we've invested more of our partnership funding to have more of those assets out in the local communities.
you. I think Councillor Proctor, Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you very much, Convener. Apologise for not being able to attend the grand opening of the new police station. I'll try and again sometime. But my question really is to do with community engagement and community councils. Now, in my ward, I've got 6 community councils, and I think in the last 2 months I've seen police presence at one of the community council meetings. Would it be able, and I appreciate that officers, are better employed on the ground, but I think attendance at some more community councils would be beneficial to these communities, because it does give them, the communities, a sort of sense of confidence, knowing that stuff that they're concerned about is being listened to and probably acted upon.
Thank you, Councillor. Absolutely agree with you, and my community officers will endeavour to attend the community councils. As you can appreciate, they can't always get to everyone that they intend to, and it may be that they've intended to go on a particular evening and then they've been called away, but I know that they are all diaried and they're all scoped to attend them when they're on duty. Their shifts also play a bit of a part as to being difficult for them to get as often as they would like, but certainly endeavour to have them attending as frequently as possible, and where they can't attend, there is an expectation that a report is supplied to the community council to give them an update on the local issues, and hopefully that your local community council members can all have access to the community mailboxes, and if you need me to reshare that, I can, so that you know that you can have a contact into each of your community teams throughout Angus.
Thank you for that. Yeah, the monthly reports do arrive, and they are greatly appreciated, and thank you for your answer.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks, Convener. Councillor MacDonald's already touched on it, but the 2 recent incidents in Verkeeler, obviously they're very close together, concerning, and it's not the first time a lorry's hit that bridge. I just wonder if there's been any findings on there, or is there any plans for preventing reoccurrence? I just wondered if there's been any findings since then. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your question, Councillor. Yeah, those matters are still sat for final closure and assessment, and obviously, sadly, people have lost their lives in those incidents, and there is a full assessment before deciding whether there are charges that are brought around by the Crown, so we're probably a little bit early just to provide that. What I would say is that we do review these incidents to look for and identify any learning, as well as across the partnership to ensure that we prevent anything like that happening again.
Okay, thank you for that. That's reassuring. Councillor Cowdery. Go back it, yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, will we see an update on those perhaps in the next set of papers for these, or would that not usually be something that we would see in the Scrutiny and Audit papers? Thanks.
Yeah, it's something, if we bring charges around, it's absolutely something we can include in the papers. Otherwise, Grace will go away, understand where we are, and come back with a specific update for yourselves. No problem.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Councillor Cowdery.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you mentioned that obviously a lot of your resourcing is dependent on the Scottish Government giving you a particular package. I just wondered if you could say that the needs here in Angus or Tayside would be distinct in some way from the national prioritisation, and if so, sort of what would you highlight as being your top resourcing needs, I guess? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor. Ultimately, the resourcing picture across the whole organisation is considered. That is based on threat, risk and harm, but of course geography plays a huge part, and that's where in Tayside there's a significant challenge for us, given the size and scale of the whole division. So that's taken into account when we're allocating resource, and then for me as the divisional commander, considering where I put my assets and how we deploy them across the county. So we will absolutely continue to do that. In terms of the priority for me and resources, it's about being able to respond to the community needs and the demands, and that is based on and the elements that are policing functions and ensuring that police officers are doing police officers' jobs, and therefore supporting the community around prevention, detection of crime. So those are the priorities. I've mentioned a couple of times the 2030 vision, but the thriving workforce element for me is hugely important, and it's why we highlight elements around our estate strategy to ensure that our officers have the appropriate locations to work from, and that in a wider sense we give our officers all the skills and training that they need to be able to come and support the community. So hopefully that gives you that answer.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, any comments? Councillor Bell, Councillor Devine.
Thank you. COSLA and the Scottish Government launched a new toolkit yesterday around understanding hate crime. It's primarily for local authority staff to upskill them in terms of identifying and reporting hate crimes. So it might be something that you want to be aware of in terms of seeing more reporting coming through, and it might be helpful maybe in 6 months or so to get a wee update to see if you've seen that. So comment and a bit of suggestion, hope you don't mind. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm really happy to take that, and of course we absolutely encourage the reporting of hate crime, so yeah, really welcome that, and we'll come back to a further committee with it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Devine.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you very much for letting us see your new abode at William Wallace House. It was lovely to see that, and it's so much more suitable for your staff. And it was really nice and bright and light. So I hope people will take the opportunity to visit, you know, to go out there. People may think it's not in the middle of the town anymore, but it's very accessible in actual fact. I just wanted to say I was glad to see that you're going to be concentrating on improving communication, kind of two-way communication with the public, because that's probably an area that we do get complaints about. I mean, obviously your staffing situation is similar to the council's, and so it wouldn't be that easy, but I do hope that you can achieve that. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments from anyone? Don't think so. Yes, I would just like to add my thanks for the invite to the new police office at William Wallace House. I think a number of members of Scrutiny and Audit took advantage of that, and certainly for those of us who remember the building, you've certainly freshened it up. It looks like a good working environment. Hope it works well for you, and yeah, obviously the council's very pleased to have a secure tenant in there who's going to pay the rent, so that's good. So we've been asked to note and scrutinise this report, which I think we've done. So thank our colleagues from Police and Fire for their attendance today, and if you want to leave us now, that will be understood. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to item 6, the Angus Integrated Joint Board Annual Performance Report 24-25, and I think we have Mr. John Cooper here to present. So over to you, John.
Many thanks, Convener. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm presenting on behalf of Sandy Berry today, and I'm pleased to present the Angus Integration Joint Board's Annual Performance Report for 2024-25 to committee today. This report fulfils our statutory duty under the Public Bodies Scotland Act, but provides assurance to both NHS, Tayside Board and Angus Council on our progress in delivering safe, effective and person-centred services across Angus. So throughout the year, the IGB provides regular updates on progress against each of its strategic priorities. And within those reports, we bring forward the associated targets, measures and outcomes specific to each of those priorities. And that approach does mean that performance, assurance and improvement are visible and transparent throughout the year rather than reported only through this annual summary. The annual performance report therefore serves as both a reflection on what's been achieved over 2024-25 and an overarching statement of accountability to our communities and our partners. The report presented evidence of continued progress across our strategic priorities. Those are aligned to the National Health and Wellbeing Outcomes, our local strategic commissioning plan in Angus, and the wider Tayside programmes for urgent and unscheduled care, primary care and population health. Despite the well-recognised financial and workforce pressures across the system, Angus does continue to deliver strong and improving performance, and 10 of the 18 national integration indicators are now better than the Scottish average, which is great to see, and we've maintained a clear focus on prevention, early intervention and community-based support. I'll not go through, obviously, the whole report. You'll have it in front of you. I'll pick a few examples to highlight. So delayed discharges have remained amongst the lowest in Scotland for much of the reporting year, supported by a strong Home First ethos, effective use of reablement and step-down capacity, and close daily collaboration between the acute and the community teams. Unmet need for home care has halved over the reporting period from 984 hours down to 486 hours. And that's been achieved through improved workforce capacity, digital scheduling and better alignment of commissioning with operational delivery. Our hospital admissions from care homes continue to fall, and that's driven by enhanced within the homes, anticipatory care planning and the work of our care home professional oversight groups. Waiting times for community mental health, drug and alcohol treatment and psychological therapies remain within the national standards, reflecting a sustained focus on access and experience. Our primary care improvement plan continues to expand the role of multidisciplinary teams with pharmacy, physiotherapy and mental health practitioners now embedded across the GP clusters. And the Community Alarm Control Centre successfully transitioned to the Shared Alarm Receiving Centre, which is the first in Tayside, strengthening resilience and digital connectivity for vulnerable residents. We've also seen significant progress in public health and wellbeing, and there's been over 950 referrals to the Be Active, Live Well programme. Over 5,000 copies of the Angus Nature Prescribing Calendar, which have been distributed to GP practices across Angus. The Are You OK campaign, which was launched to raise awareness around mental health and suicide prevention, and the development of the Living Well with Dementia website and Angus Carers Academy, which are empowering families to live well at home for longer. So the IGB continues to be driven by its commitment to best value, effective governance and meaningful community engagement. And our strategic commissioning plan underpins this work and is aligned to the wider Tayside transformation programmes, which includes urgent and unscheduled care commission, the primary care strategy and the developing service renewal framework. So in summary, Convener, the 2024-25 annual performance report provides assurance that Angus continues to deliver safe, effective and person-centred services, underpinned by strong partnership working, robust governance and evidencing outcomes for our population in Angus. We're proud of the progress made, but remain focused on the challenges ahead and on sustaining a strong, resilient and integrated system for the people of Angus and Tayside. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I've got questions from Councillor Devine, Councillor Bell. Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks very much for the report. It is really very positive in many ways. Just wanted to examine the prescribing process, though. I mean, obviously, there's been progress being made both in the reduction of unused prescriptions, that there was a lot of waste in that, wasn't there? So that's really good news. And in reducing the costs of prescribing in the different ways that you've mentioned. But what was confusing me was that under the family health services, the story seems to be really quite different, and there's a 2.9 million overspend. Why is this difference? I don't really understand it. Just wanted to add that thank you for introducing me to pharmacogenomics, which I had never heard of before, but it sounds like a real breakthrough. So good luck with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. I may need to come back to some of the nuances around your question. I can speak to you around the pharmacogenomics part of a session that I attended recently, which is really exciting for Angus, which take leaps and bounds towards reducing pharmacy waste, in that prescriptions are very much then focused on the individual's genetic makeup. Now, I'm certainly not the best person to speak to the complexities around that, and I'm certainly not qualified to do so, but from sitting in those sessions, it's really clear that that is going to make significant differences for us in Angus going forward, and will continue to contribute. As far as the overspend goes, it's been an overspend for some time with pharmacy. We know that there's significant work going on. One of our Associate Medical Directors, Scott Jemison's been key to a number of the pieces of work around that. So what I could suggest, Councillor Devine, is if I liaise with Dr. Jemison and come back to you on some of the aspects of your question, because I think he would be best placed to answer that, if that's okay.
That would be fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bell, Councillor Speed and Councillor Proctor.
Thank you. And hi, John. I'm going to squeeze 2 quick questions in, given that the convener set precedent with others. So lots in there to be positive about. I'm really pleased to see unmet need has been reduced, and obviously I know you'll be keeping your eyes on that. I'm really pleased about the opening of the beacon and the help it's being to people in crisis. My question's particularly around priority 1, the prevention and proactive care work, and you know I've been a big fan of this for a long time, and this kind of work is pivotal in the reform and renewal agenda and population health framework ambitions. And I just wondered where we are in terms of mainstreaming this kind of activity, because the prevention focus is really where we need to be in terms of transforming people's health. And also, how are people navigating minor injuries and illness units and CTAC? How well is that working for people, whether it's clinicians or patients? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Absolutely agree in terms of the prevention agenda. That's why it remains central within our strategic commissioning plan, and will be central to the next iteration of our strategic commissioning plan when it comes to IGB in the new year. I think Angus should be really proud of the work that it's doing around the preventative agenda. We do have buy-in from clinicians, and not only buy-in, but they are promoting it extensively across their GP practices as well. So the use of ensuring that we have nature prescribing central to what we do has been supported and endorsed, which tries to actually take advantage of where we're placed in Angus. We've got so much on our doorstep, and to encourage people to access that as an evidential-based approach to ensuring that individuals' not only mental but physical well-being is paramount. So it will continue to remain a focus. As far as it being embedded into practice going forward, I think that will just be a continual journey for us, but it does not feel like we're pushing against a closed door with our clinical colleagues. Absolutely feels that we're in partnership together around that work. So hopefully that covers that element. In terms of the minor injuries and CTAC, again, I may need to come back to you with some comments from my colleague Lisa Prudham, who oversees that part of the service. So in terms of how individuals have accessed that, the feedback that we've had so far has been that there's been strong community engagement. We have sought to consult with individuals who are service users, but also the clinicians to ensure that both sides of the picture are able to have access and the benefits from that. But if you're happy, Councillor Bell, I'll take this one off the table and come back to you with a fuller answer once I've spoken to my colleague Lisa, if that's okay.
That's great. Thanks, John.
Okay, thanks very much. And Councillor Speed and then Councillor Proctor. Councillor Speed.
Yep, thank you. My question was in relation to the community alarm and telecare switchover. I just wondered if you could confirm what communication there's been with service users who purchased that service. It's ultimately a lifeline and a form of communication. Because I note that on the council's website that it still has the old telephone numbers, and I'm just a bit concerned that perhaps people have been trying to get in touch, you know, particularly in an emergency situation, and haven't been able to get through.
Thank you, Councillor Speed. Well, certainly we'll pick that up as an action this afternoon, and I'll make contact with the service leader responsible, and we'll ensure that that telephone number is the correct going forward. The first part of your question in terms of engagement with service users, that has been a key component of the work that was undertaken, and actually the process was to ensure that we have a better community alarm service, that it is digitally enabled, that it's not relying on old technology, which at times can be problematic, and particularly depending on the geography within Angus can create further problems as well. So it's absolutely a step in the right direction to ensure that those who have community alarm have a quick response when required. So there has been consultation with service users around that. But in terms of the second part, I'll, off the back of this meeting, will contact the service leader to make sure that we do have the correct numbers on the website, because that's very important. Thank you for highlighting that.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And Councillor Proctor.
Thanks very much, Convener. Thank you, John, for that very full and informed report. I'd just like to look at page 68, where we talk about Angus Community Respiratory Team. Now, as one who suffered from a chronic illness, bronchiectasis, we have formed a Tayside bronchiectasis support group, which has been going for a number of years. And I just wonder if your community respiratory team are aware of that. And if we actually have quite a good number of members throughout Angus, and indeed throughout Tayside. And if anyone would like to join, get in touch with me, and we can add them to our list. And the only thing I'd just like to say, they mentioned Dr. Scott Jamieson, and I think it's maybe something you could consider putting in the report, that Scott Jamieson has initiated the veterans, recording all the veterans in the county, and Angus is the lead county for doing this in Scotland, and I think it's something worthwhile mentioning for all his work. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Proctor. Any further questions? Any comments from members? Councillor Devine.
Yeah, thanks, John, very much for including the film of the young carers. That was lovely to watch. It was really quite heart-warming. And I congratulate you on the living well with dementia. I was just wondering if the meeting centres are mentioned on the website, because they are so useful for people who are diagnosed with early onset dementia. They do a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. I'll check that. You're absolutely right. The meeting centres in Angus are a crucial committee to supporting individuals post-diagnosis with dementia. Angus has been one of the leading areas through a lot of work undertaken initially by Kerry Connections and then subsequently other groups who've taken forward the meeting centre agenda. So we're very proud of having that in Angus, and we've got a strong reputation for that support. So absolutely right, I'll ensure and check that if it's not on the Living Well with Dementia website, that we have a link there for that going forward. Thank you.
Sorry for the question when it was supposed to be a comment.
Councillor Devine. Councillor Bell,
just to say, I looked at the website and you can find the meeting centres on them, so you're fine.
Okay, thank you, Julie.
Okay, any further comments? Don't see any. Okay, well, thanks very much. Thanks very much, John, for the report, which is a very clear and easy to read report, so congratulations on that. We're asked to review and acknowledge the report, which I think we've done. Are we happy with that? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 7, which is the detailed risk reporting to Scrutiny and Audit, and we'll hand over to Ian Lorimer on that one.
Thank you very much, Convener, and good afternoon to members of the committee. So the Scrutiny and Audit Committee has, for a number of years now, undertaken detailed reviews of risks, those risks that could affect the Council and the delivery of the Council's objectives. And you might remember at the last cycle of meetings, the committee agreed to a 3-year programme of these detailed risk reviews. So today is day 1 of that new 3-year programme covering sustainable workforce. Now, workforce-related risks are relevant at the strategic level, but they're also relevant in terms of individual services. So the detailed review today, we're kind of covering both elements, both the strategic element and a view from a couple of services in relation to workforce risks. I'm going to pass over to Service Leader Linda Thompson, who is going to introduce the detail around the strategic risk for sustainable workforce, and also joined online, I think, by, I can see her, Beth Reader from our Education Lifelong Learning Service, who has a bit more detail about the two directorate level risks in this area as well, Convener. So I'll pass over to Linda.
Thank you. You've got quite a bit of information on the risk register information in front of you there, but I'm going to just give you a brief summary. This particular strategic risk is becoming increasingly worrying for us. We are slowly reducing our workforce as we manage the budget that is available to us. We're staying relatively steady around sickness, absence and turnover, which is good. But what we are aware of is that our employees are telling us that work is getting harder. Workload is a pressure. Being able to juggle the amount of work is a pressure. And so there's a lot of action happening across the Council. In addition, we have a lot of change happening because we're trying to adjust to be more efficient. We're trying to improve our processes. We're restructuring. Last year alone, we had more than 25 parts of service review happening across the Council. So you can imagine all the change that comes with that on top of the day-to-day work. So keeping our workforce is a real challenge for us, and I'm quite sure that's something that will come up in the other detail that's available to you. So you can see on this report a range of the strategic actions we're taking. That's on top of the things that we have in our workforce plan, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So I'm quite happy to take any questions on any of that. What I would say is that even in itself, this is a lot of work to ask people to consider. And particularly our managers across the Council who are trying to manage their teams and the challenges that they're facing. But I'm really happy to pick up any points from it or answer anything specific.
Would it be sensible to take questions yourself now before we hand over to Beth Reader? So any questions for Linda? Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. On page 130, the latest update. It's quite pessimistic, given the risk that we've got and the actions that we've got in the paper. I just wondered, how does it correlate? So we've got the red zone risk in the paper, and we're basically saying the game's a bogey.
I'm not sure we're saying the game's a bogey, but I can see where you're coming from. It is increasingly difficult. We are running out of creative options of how we can resolve this. You know, our chief exec started somebody else got something on? No. So our chief exec started a review with our own team, and I'm sure, as I mentioned, we've had 25 other reviews over the last year. We're looking at how we're structured. We're looking at the way we work. But the picture is relatively bleak in terms of budget and the savings that we're having to make. So there are more and more concerns about, at some point, we're going to have to think big for some of the changes that we've got. You know, and there aren't lots of options open to us.
Okay, any further questions? Mr. Lorimer here.
Well, yeah, thank you, convener. Just to pick up on Councillor MacDonald's point there. Yes, it is very, very difficult, but we do have a track record of achievement and success. And I'm not saying that for a minute that hasn't put added pressure on our workforce, because I think it has. But there are choices to be made in terms of future budgets. So it doesn't necessarily all have to be around cost reduction. There might be ways to grow our income. Council tax will be a consideration. But I did want to specifically flag on page 125. It's actually marked as a red risk, and there's actually a more positive update in relation to this. And that is when the council agreed the budget for the current year, there was £1.5 million set aside as part of a reserve strategy for a 3-year modern and graduate apprentice programme. We're very nearly at a point where we can bring forward those proposals to members, and that is a huge positive, I think, for the council in terms of addressing some of the succession planning challenges, creating opportunities for young people and others to join the council and start a career path with the council. So it was just to provide, I guess, a degree of balance. It is very difficult. It has been very difficult. It will continue to remain very difficult, and trying to make some impacts in terms of investment where we can afford to do that. Thank you.
So I guess then my follow-up question to that is, why is the latest update written the way the latest update's written? Because the latest update's written, given the requirement for service-defined budget savings in the forthcoming years, it is likely that the workforce will reduce further and therefore have an impact. But the answer from you seems to be, Ian, that sounded a bit more aggressive than it was meant to be. The answer that you said, Ian, is basically that there are choices to be made around that. So the assumption that it's likely is an assumption, whereas the latest update should surely be that choices need to be made too. Would that be a fair critique of that update, or is that unfair?
I shall try and answer that. I mean, I think if we look at the history has been one of, although there has been growth in the council's workforce in particular areas, and I'm thinking of early learning and childcare expansion in areas like that, there has been significant reductions in workforce as part of meeting budget targets and all of the pressures that come to mind. Now, in the next report that we have on the agenda, which is the whole of the strategic risk register, number one on the list is financial sustainability, and I guess I'm being a bit more gloomy there in relation to the outlook for that. I think there is still a risk, and this is about risk. There is a risk that further workforce reductions will likely be required. Now, there's maybe a discussion about the extent to which and where those may be palatable to happen. But I think an element of the financial pressures are not going away. So I think the risk and the likelihood still exists that further reductions in all probability will be needed. But there are, as I say, choices to be made about whether those are applied, how far they're applied, and where they're applied. So I hope that provides a bit of reassurance. We're going to get into all of this in quite a bit of detail as part of setting the 26-27 budget, because there'll be a number of choices to be made in relation to that. Thanks.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work that's in, all the information that's in there. I know how long it takes to compile. And I'm just wondering, I guess, a couple of things that each team, each directorate will have, I guess, a really good picture of where the waterline is for them, below which, if they fall, they're in real sticky situation operationally. I guess it's a bit of assurance around how visible that is with the executive team and senior management, that is being well managed, that when it gets close to that, things happen to avoid it. And also around when people leave us voluntarily, do we have a good picture of where they're going, and are our pay levels an issue in that, in relation to neighbouring local authorities, if they're we're not paying quite as much as those neighbouring local authorities, and I appreciate that has budget consequences. Thanks.
If I can pick up the first part of that and then perhaps hand over to Linda for the second part. So the first part of the question was really about the water line and how close to that we are. I would say, and this is probably more anecdotal than evidence-based, we cover that. So one of the things we're doing as part of next year's budget process is identifying the risks associated with different options and scoring those risks using our 5x5 model that you see here. And part of that consideration is the safety of doing that in terms of its impact on the services we deliver and our people. I think it would be fair to say pretty much, I would say, across the council, certainly my observation would be that because of all of the savings and changes that have been made, our levels of resilience are much less because there's just simply fewer people. Part of the changes that we've made over a long period of years has been around reducing layers of management, and that's easier than cutting direct frontline services, but it does make us more susceptible and from a resilience point of view. So that is a difficult one, but it's a risk that we very much have as senior leaders on our radar. And when it comes to budget choices, some of those things will be flagged as part of that. So I hope that answers the first part, and I'll pass over to Linda for the second part around pay, etc.
Thank you. It's not, it is a reason for some people leaving, but it's not a sort of across the board reason for people leaving as far as we have the information for. What we are seeing is an increasing number of people. Obviously our workforce is ageing, like all public sector workforce. We're seeing more people leave through retirement or just coming to the end of their career within a local authority context. That's an increase for us. And we have, less than half, but not hugely less than half of our workforce in that 45 to 61-year-old category, which is quite considerable. So we've spent a lot of time talking about succession planning, how we bring in young people, create a more sustainable workforce. And one of the elements of that is our approach to recruitment. So we've been really challenging ourselves on that, and that's part of that story in the report too, is that that's a challenge for us in some parts of the organisation where, despite repeated attempts and trying to do it differently or have a career grade option or different things that we do, that we're struggling in some parts of the organisation to bring people in. And we are shrinking as a workforce, not massively, but a bit at a time. But I wouldn't say that any reports that are coming to me are saying that people are leaving just because of pay.
Thank you. Councillor Speed online question.
Yep, thanks, Convener. It's in relation to 163 in terms of collaboration and partnerships. And I just wondered what perhaps the potential impacts of funding reductions at Dundee and Angus College may have on Angus Council's ability to deliver shared outcomes through partnership working. And I'm thinking particularly in relation to perhaps employability, skills development, health and social care, health and wellbeing within our communities, and how might this affect the council's resilience and capacities?
I think that's possibly a question maybe that we could deal with in the next report. I think might be more relevant.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can pose it then.
Yeah, sorry, Convener, I was going out, but then I just felt it kind of tied in with some of what was being said. But yeah, apologies, I'll keep it for the next one.
Okay, any further questions on this report? Well, we've got Beth Reader to participate now, so maybe a good point to hand over to you, and you can give us your presentation, and then there may be questions there, and then we can do comments at the end.
Thank you, Convener. Just for clarity, I'm going to present the children, families and justice information first, and then pause for questions if that's okay. And then I'll come back to talk about the education and lifelong learning workforce risk. So to begin, the summarised risk for children, families and justice is that the Directorate will have insufficiently skilled, experienced, qualified social work capacity to consistently maintain standards of care while also ensuring the well-being of staff. The workforce risk was identified a number of years ago and is aligned with national trends which relate to recruitment and retention in the social work workforce. And within Angus, there have also been specific workforce issues in local areas such as Arbroath. However, the risk does apply to the whole area. It's monitored on an ongoing basis by the Children, Families and Justice Management team using Pentana, the agreed system for that. There's obviously information in the appendix, but I will just go through a few highlights before we consider questions. And Kirsty Lee, who is the Chief Social Work Officer, is on the call as well, who'll be able to pick up any more service-specific related queries. So the challenges in recruitment and retention have a number of impacts, which include but are not limited to increased pressure on colleagues and management teams, reduced capacity in the workforce to manage complex cases, which can lead to increased statutory intervention, increased numbers of children in care, or increased risk. And for children and families, workforce pressures can impact on relationships with workers, which has a potential impact on their outcomes as well. The Directorate, as outlined in the appendix, has implemented a range of mitigating actions, and there are internal controls in place, which are a mix of short, medium, and long term. Some examples are noted in the appendix in the most recent update, but I would highlight the recent newly qualified social workers graduate scheme, which recruited 15 new social workers in March 2025. There's also been the introduction of the qualifying social worker sessional posts, which took place last year, which gave final year students an opportunity to contribute directly to service delivery while gaining paid experience. There's also internal development underway looking at flexible approaches to undertaking social work degrees, for example, through distance learning. So these local mitigations provide flexible routes for growing the local workforce and have been developed over a number of years. And in addition to these long-term actions, there's also been short-term measures deployed where required, for example, to address the issues in Arbroath, such as recruiting additional support staff, the redeployment of resource and case transfers when required. The main challenge for these mitigating measures, and particularly the long and medium term ones, is simply the length of time that it will take to see the evidence of the impact. But as noted, there's regular ongoing monitoring by the CFJ management team. The risk is currently scored at 16, which reflects the high likelihood and impact of occurrence. The risk score has not changed recently, however, it's kept under review, and it could be that changes over time as the impact of the longer term mitigations is seen. So I'll pause there for questions, and obviously Kirsty's on, who may want to add some more detail to me. Thank you.
Okay, committee, there's any questions there? And we've got Kirsty Lee on the call as well, if there's any specific social work questions. Not seeing any questions on that one. Okay, I think on you go, Beth. You're now going to do education and lifelong learning, are you? Is that the next step?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay. On you go, and there may be questions on that one.
Thank you. The workforce risk for ELL covers three main areas in the appendix, which are the ongoing national discussion relating to teacher numbers and red lines, succession planning in the central leadership team, and an overall reduction in contracts being offered due to budget pressures. The risk was identified several years ago for ELL and is a response to a mix of national and local issues. One element that I just mentioned relating to challenges in filling posts in the central team has now been resolved due to changes in how we advertise for those posts. That element will be removed from the risk at the next update, so I'm not going to spend much time talking about that. Of the remaining elements, there continues to be discussions at a national level regarding teacher numbers and the implementation of an additional 90 minutes of reduced class contact time. And in November this year, trade unions opened ballots for industrial action relating to this. The main impact relating to this risk is financial and relates to the alignment of our directorate budgets with required resources. And there is also a risk now arising in relation to the industrial action. We won't know the outcome of that until the ballots close, I think at the start of the next calendar year. So in terms of overall mitigations, the leadership team maintains overall control of the teaching workforce with a close alignment of budgets to our projected roles and class configurations. A key thing to note for ELL is that our school roles are decreasing across both primary and secondary, and our current projections are that we will have 1,000 fewer pupils by the end of 2031. Monitoring of this data is key to ensuring resources are aligned with the requirements of the service and that any reduction in our teaching workforce is based on changes in demand. This could ultimately impact the number of teaching posts we require and permanent contracts available on an ongoing basis. We have robust processes in place for reviewing workforce data and have recently completed the National 2025 Census exercise. The outcome of this will be published on the 9th of December and it will show where Angus trends sit in relation to national. The main challenge relating to mitigating actions for this is that the risk is mainly driven by our external policy landscape. So locally, we're focusing on managing our workforce appropriately based on the data and information available to us. As a result of this, the risk score sits at 16 and has been unchanged for a period of time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so thanks very much for that. Any comments on all the reports we've had on this item from elected members? I guess just going into the... Oh, Councillor Speed.
Yeah, it was just in relation to the question asked previously. I wasn't sure if... Yeah.
This was a question about Dundee and Angus College.
Yeah. Is it on the...
I'm being advised that's the next report.
All right, okay. Apologies. I thought you meant after the commentary. Thanks.
So any comments on this report? I guess I would just say we're now entering the budget process. So I think some of the comments that have been passed today are certainly, I would have thought, amber warnings, if not red warnings, I think. And I think that's something for elected members to consider as part of the budget process, I would say. I felt we were getting to that point last year, and we're clearly a year further on, and we know that the budget challenges are unrelenting, really, I think. So, yeah, I think that's well noted, I think. Thank you. So, I think we were asked to note and comment on this report. I think we've done that. So thanks very much for contributions on this item, and we'll move on to the next item. We're now on to the Strategic Risk Register update, and that's again with Mr. Lorimer.
Thanks again, Convener. Yes, this is the last report covered a proportion, one item in the Strategic Risk Register. This is the whole of the Risk Register. So as part of our risk management arrangements, the Council leadership team of officers, we do a full review of the Strategic Risk Register. It used to be called the Corporate Risk Register, now called the Strategic Risk Register. We do that twice a year. That's in addition to interim review activity that's undertaken by the Risk Monitoring Group. So this report covers the latest full review of the Strategic Risk Register, and I've summarised within the kind of covering report the main changes from the previous update. In terms of risk scores, there's one's gone up, one's gone down, and the other 7 have stayed the same. And we've also made a slight change in terms of risk 9 related to climate change. Previously it was covering climate change and other emergencies, but we think we'd better just to focus on climate change as the real big strategic risk there. Appendix 1 to the report provides just a one-page kind of dashboard of the strategic risks, including the direction of travel and the RAG status, the red, amber, green status of those risks. And then Appendix 2 is a full an extract from our Pentana system, which is the full risk register with all the detail, all the explanatory narrative, all the mitigating actions, etc., etc. So quite a bit of detail in that. It is a full update. There is a lot to take into account there. It covers a whole range of things, some of which we've also covered in the previous report. But I guess that reflects just how seriously we take risk management and the need to manage risks in order to, the council can achieve the objectives set. I think I've got most of the risk owners. Each risk has an owner. I'm an owner for 3 of them, but I have the other risk owners available if there's any questions of detail on the report. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Councillor Bell, and then Councillor Devine, and then Councillor Shepherd and Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Convener. Thanks, Ian. I just have a wee query on page 141 under financial sustainability in the likelihood column at the end of the first paragraph there. The latest projected funding gap is £32 million for the period 25-26 to 27-28. I wonder if you could break that down across each of the years, and is that, what is that number dependent on? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. That number is dependent on an awful lot of different things, I would say, not least of which what happens with inflation, what happens with government grant, pay awards less so because we've got a 2-year pay deal which at least deals with the first year. So as you say on page 141, there's a projected 3-year funding gap of 32 million. That covers the current financial year up to 27-28. Now we are working on an update to the Council's medium-term budget strategy. The plan is to bring that to Council in the next meeting of Council next month. The good news is, if it is good news, is that the 3-year projection for the latest period, so that would cover financial year 26-27 to 28-29, I think. The 3-year projection for that is around 24 million, and that splits it over the 3 years of 10, 7 and 7 roughly. So it is a slightly improved picture than the last update that we did, but still one that is hugely challenging, and that's why we've said in this update, financial sustainability risk remains at the highest level of likelihood and impact. So there's still concerns there. We'll have a bit more information once the UK budget is announced this week, and then the Scottish budget in mid-January will give us a bit more of a sense of where we're going on that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Convener. So on page 142, Ian, you're talking about community engagement, citizens panel, etc. I don't suppose any of that's happening yet, but maybe you've got some plans for that, which would be interesting to hear about. I guess we're going to have to face people up with the dire situation that we find ourselves in, so that they do understand that there will be very difficult choices to make. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Devine. Yeah, so we have, this has been discussed through policy and budget strategy groups. So we've got a report coming to Council next month around a consultation on plans and budgets for 26-27. So that will give a sense of what we're trying to engage on. That is more focused on priorities for people rather than individual choices around budget savings, etc. It's very difficult. The Council's budget, the Council's finances, the Council's services, they're complex. It's not easy to explain why situations are what they are. Although we have tried to simplify that in terms of past consultations. We might well use that type of kind of animations, etc. We might try and use that again and to help engage people. But it is complex and quite difficult to explain to the tax-paying public.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks, Convener. Just some very serious reading here, with a score of 25 for financial sustainability. I do think it's maybe worth reading out a short part from page 141. In setting the 25-26 budget, the Council had to address a funding gap of 11.7 million. This gap required an 11% rise in council tax, savings of 2.4 million, and the use of reserves to 2.8 million, among other measures. This was despite the grant settlement from the Scottish Government being much better than previous years. The latest projected funding gap is 32 million for the period 25-26, 27-28. Councillor Bell's question was quite helpful because it gave some insight into those figures are slightly less than what were read there, but it does lead me to think that our constituents are the cost of living crisis is very real for a lot of people, but the numbers looks unavoidable that further high council tax rises are going to be required just to keep council services afloat, and a state would like them to be. You know, and that really brings me to the question, Ian, of the commentary. Yeah, the sentence in the papers as well. The current approach to local government funding of core services is not sustainable and has not been sustainable for some time now. So my question really is, when do you see the turning point where national governments realise that that's the case and start to take this crisis a bit more seriously? And perhaps you've maybe got some advice to offer Rachel Reeves tomorrow on what she might do to help local government. Thanks very much, Ian.
Thanks, Councillor Shepherd. Certainly no advice for the Chancellor. Don't envy her job either. Yeah, and I've said this going back probably 2 or 3 years. For me, the system of funding of local government needs reform, because what we've had over a long period of years is costs that have been rising much faster than the funding streams to pay for those, and the cumulative effect of that has been really significant. So by the end of this financial year, and if I go back to our kind of starting point when we started measuring this back to 2013-14, since 2013-14, by the end of this financial year, we will have saved roughly £100 million. Now our net revenue budget is something like 370 million, so we've saved, you know, getting on for a third of the position. So there does need to be change. COSLA, on behalf of all local authorities in Scotland, have published a manifesto which they are using to put forward as a case for change into the, you know, with the Scottish parliamentary elections coming up next year. So there are attempts to try and change the tide, but of course it depends on the performance of the economy, and the performance of the economy very much drives how much money is available for public services, and that's a really, really complex picture, which is well beyond my knowledge. But we will continue to press through COSLA mainly for what I think COSLA refer to as fair funding for local government, but it's a difficult one in the context of the overall public finances. And as I said earlier in response to Councillor MacDonald, there's a lot of decisions need to be made around next year's budget before you know, we'll know where savings, council tax levels, etc. land. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
I mean, yeah, thank you, Convener. The first risk on page 141 is in the impact likelihood top corner. It's in the top right-hand corner. So for the layman, it looks like it's a dead cert, but it's actually only going to happen if councillors are irresponsible. Has there ever been a time where councillors over the last however many years of Angus Council haven't done their job responsibly and delivered that balanced budget? Because reading the likelihood and potential impact, whether we've liked the previous councils or not, everyone, I think, over the last 20 years has delivered that and they've done what's necessary and what's right. So is there a difference this year that would prompt us to have that concern and risk over us as elected members in delivering that budget risk?
So, thanks, Councillor MacDonald. The council has never failed to set a balanced budget and then maintain that balanced position each financial year. Now, I've been the statutory finance officer for more than 19 years now, and I have had I've been fortunate in that role, in that different groups of councillors over all that period have worked with me to help balance those budgets. So we've got a really strong record of good working around that, and that's our position is difficult, but we've been able to manage all of that because we've worked well, and difficult decisions have been made by elected members at the points that they've needed to be made. of course, each year becomes harder and harder. Once you've saved something in an area, well, you can't save it again. You need to find something else. So that becomes particularly difficult. You did ask about, do I have any particular concerns about whether there's a different risk profile there? Not really. I'm simply flagging up that the constant pressure and the difficulties of trying to balance the budget lead me to leave that a 5x5 risk, a maximum risk score. If when we get the grant settlement in January, that's better than what we have projected, that might allow us to reduce the risk score somewhat at the next review. But that's 80% of the revenue funding that we need comes from government towards our net revenue budget. And when we're so reliant on that as the income source, our financial risks are not all within our own gift to control. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious, Councillor Speed, that we didn't take your question at the previous item, and there were two parts to that previous item. So now I think you want to ask your question now.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Just to say that I am joining remotely today because I have been having IT laptop issues for a bit of time that still need resolved, and so I feel like I'm on the agenda items in the right order, but maybe not. But yeah, thanks for allowing me the opportunity to ask the same question again. I think this will be the third time and third attempt. But yeah, I think, there's no doubt about it. We have, significant challenges. It's a worrying picture. And the question I was asking was just in terms of some of those challenges and worries that our other partners have, for example, Dundee and Angus College, and what impact that may have in terms of shared outcomes, but also our own budget resource as well across different areas of our work.
Neil, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, Councillor Duff, thank you. Through you, thank you for the question, Councillor Speed, around working in partnership with Dundee and Angus College. And you're right, Councillor Speed, it's a difficult and complex landscape to navigate in terms of our delivery. I think we will see Dundee and Angus College absolutely committed to providing and delivering the curriculum that provides progression pathways for young people. We meet regularly with Julie Grace as an example with our secondary teacher colleagues. I think we will see an impact on the college curriculum and the school-college partnership, as I would describe it. I think from the college point of view, they're seeing schools delivering increased numbers of national progression awards. So their offer is the same as ours. So it's about making sure that provides best value in terms of Dundee and Angus College and for us. We're also, I think, going to see a change to the delivery for our exceptional leavers. So those programmes that run from January onwards, I think from what I'm seeing, the college are looking at stopping that. So again, within school, we're looking to make sure that we course our learners correctly, and we can still use Dundee and Angus College where appropriate to support those learner journeys. But we're in discussions with them and how that will look across Angus, not just in Arbroath, but across Angus, and the school-college partnership is absolutely committed in terms of Dundee and Angus College and from education and lifelong learning to best support young people.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And Kelly McIntosh wants to come in at this point. Thanks.
Yeah, Councillor Speed, thanks for your question. It was just the second part, and I've maybe interpreted you wrongly. But you mentioned other partners, and I think it's important to recognise that the collaborations and partnerships risk is very closely aligned to the transformation risk and the public service reform work. So when we're working with our partners, of course, we're looking to integrate services fully where we can. And members will know that the public service reform document speaks about aligning finance and resource and giving over power where possible. But part of that is about everybody being on the same page about what the purpose is and what our priorities are. So it's really closely linked to planning, council planning, managing to plan properly with our partners so that we're all agreed on what our aim is and that we're aligning our resources with that. And Councillor Bell, you mentioned at the last meeting I was at about the population health framework. That's all part of that, planning with a health-based lens, helping our partners, because without our partners in Angus, we couldn't operate the way that we do. And the people in Angus wouldn't get the outcomes that they're getting. So it's about fully utilising our partnerships well and giving over some of that power and some of the accountability. I think it's really important to mention that too. So just to assure you, Councillor Speed, that that's what we're looking to do. You're actually on the Integrated Children's Services Partnership, so you're well aware. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And Councillor Bell.
Thanks. I just wanted to come in on the back of Kelly's contribution there, because nationally what we're seeing is increasing levels of economic inactivity in young people, particularly around mental health related conditions. And these people potentially are our workforce for tomorrow. And that if we can support people into education and to work opportunities with a forward-looking lens around our workforce planning, then that's a win-win in so many different ways. That people are thriving. They've moved through that challenging period of their life, and they're contributing in a meaningful way to the delivery of public services. I mean, that's really important for everybody, because we don't have enough young people as it is. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, Councillor Gregg.
Thank you. Just a comment, if you're happy to take those now, Convener. Thank you. There's been quite a lot of discussion around the financial sustainability of the Council, referring to page 141 and 142 of the report. I'm sure every single elected member, including myself, are acutely aware of the financial pressures that we as a council are under. Tomorrow Rachel Reeves will give her budget, which is later than planned, which will obviously then have the knock-on effects to the Scottish Government and the outcome of that, and then ultimately lower down on the pecking order as us as the local authorities to find out how much we're going to get or perhaps not, which will then lead to the decisions that we as an administration will then have to take. I'm not quite sure what Councillor MacDonald was alluding to in one of his questions, because it's a legal requirement that the Council set a balanced budget. So of course every administration from whichever side of the political spectrum that they sit on will of course form that balanced budget. And I can give the assurance from the administration that we are working with Mr Lorimer, have been for some time, to ensure that we do deliver that balanced and sustainable budget.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Just to clarify for Councillor Gregg, I wasn't alluding to anything. I asked a question about the risk register, and it said that the risk was that the Council doesn't pass a budget. I didn't mention anything about your administration, our administration before. It's our budget that you're administering just now. So just to be clear, I was asking specifically about the risk register that showed that there was a risk if the Council doesn't deliver a budget, then that's a massive problem. I asked but we're scrutinising the Scrutiny and Audit papers, Councillor Gregg. So I asked Ian Lorimer a question and Ian Lorimer delivered an answer. I think it was pretty clear.
Okay, no further comments. Okay, well, we've been asked to scrutinise the strategic risk issue. Do you have a comment as well?
Yeah, I did have a comment. Just obviously a very serious paper. We've touched on the finances of the Council and where we're at with these. And, I think it's incumbent on all of us that whether we're admin nor administration, we come on budget day with a budget or an alternative budget, and we've got a responsibility to take the tough choices. I remember campaigning to be a local councillor, and I said I wouldn't shy away from taking tough decisions. So I think it's vital that regardless, politics is unstable. Every political group and every councillor should either look to support or be forming and working on a budget and do what they think is right for their constituents. One thing that I'll never support in Angus is parking charges. I don't want to see them in Angus ever again, and that's something I'll never support in this chamber as an example. Thank you. Cheers.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shepherd. So no further comments. So we've been asked to scrutinise the strategic risk issue and the risks contained. I think we've clearly done that. So we have done what we've asked to do on item 8. We'll move on to item 9, which is the corporate counter fraud and mid-year review, and I'll pass over to Cathy Wiley on this one.
Thank you, Convener. Good afternoon. This is the sixth. Is that the echo away? Thank you. This is the 6-month update with information about what the counter fraud team has been working on for the last 6 months, and I look forward to what they'll be working on in the next 6 months. Just a few highlights from the report. The team is now fully staffed with 3 full-time equivalent members of staff, and they're working on items that are around raising awareness and preventative work within the council, as well as reactive work where we're investigating items that are brought to our attention. In terms of fraud risks, the SIPFA Fraud and Corruption Tracker report indicates that the main types of external fraud facing local authorities are in council tax, housing, disabled parking and business rates. Our counter fraud team has done work around all of these at some stage, maybe not all of them within the last 6 months, but certainly these are covered by NFI, and we do some proactive work around these as well as the reactive work that we have. We had a new counter fraud and corruption strategy and fraud response plan that was reviewed and updated this year, and we've also got information around training that we've provided, which is mandatory now for all staff within the council. So during the period, we've had inquiries and investigations around allegations of credit card misuse, working time fraud, abuse of position and missing monies, and disciplinary actions being taken where required, and also there have been recommendations made around strengthening the internal controls around the areas where some of these incidents have occurred. We do have one investigation which progressed with Police Scotland and resulted in the perpetrator of a grant fraud being convicted and given a custodial sentence. We do proactive data matching work around council tax, and there's an exercise ongoing at the moment around matching with credit reference agency information around single occupancy household records, and that's ongoing and will be continuing into the next 6 months. We also have the National Fraud Initiative. That's a 2-year cycle, but we're in the process of looking at matches at the moment, and we still have a few of those to work on into the next 6 months. In terms of tenancies, there have been 2 tenancies that have been returned to the council in the last 6-month period. And as I said, we'll be moving forward with the NFI work and continuing to provide advice and investigate any items that are brought to our attention. But there's also work ongoing around the requirements of the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act 2023, and also work ongoing with Legal and Democratic Service about statements that should be within contracts for suppliers around making sure that they have expectations around countering fraud written into them as well. So I do have Ewan Ritchie here in the call today, and he'll be able to answer any specific questions that you have. Thank you.
Okay, members, there's opportunity for questions. Councillor Bell.
Thank you both for the report. Obviously in fraud, and particularly any employee and corporate fraud, the breach of trust is a big issue, but I wondered if it is possible to quantify in financial terms, for the whole range of frauds, the impact on the council, and in particular at 5.5, the one that resulted in imprisonment, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. I'll do the second one first. Yeah, it was a £10,000 application for a COVID grant, business support grant, that was made fraudulently. So that covered that, and it took a wee while during COVID for it to go through court and be processed, and it eventually was earlier this year with a custodial sentence applied. As far as quantifying the monies, I can have a look at doing that for you. The amounts that we have for council tax represent the bare figures that we identify, but they exclude any like future projections or notional amounts as well. These notional amounts also apply to tenancies and blue badges, for example. So I could do that for you. I've hesitated to do in the past because it creates large amounts that larger amounts that we end up discussing at committee. I've tried to keep it simple, just using the basic amounts that we recover. But I can certainly do that for you, and I'll do so if that's what you wish. Thank you.
I think Councillor Bell's nodding her she would like that information. Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, I think we're asked to review and scrutinise. We've got Councillor Speed again. Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, there was a bit of a pause there. I just wondered to kind of what extent do the council's digital systems and kind of complex processes, I guess, create a risk of accidental non-compliance kind of or perceived fraud in some cases. Not for a minute kind of condoning fraud that takes place that is deliberate, but you know, as our processes are becoming more digital, which may kind of make it more difficult for some people, how are we mitigating through kind of design and training and oversight just to ensure that in those cases, you know, we're not increasing the risks or the impacts on some residents?
Well, thanks for the question. What I would say as a fraud investigator, we'd always be acutely aware of each of the factors that contributed to a fraud or a loss or an alleged fraud. So that's something we'll be acutely aware of. Fairness is central to what we do. So we'll always be looking to take that into account as we moved along, as we progressed an investigation. That's from my side. That's very important. I hope our systems don't mean that people are drawn into making claims that they're not entitled to make or might be improper. I hope that's not the case. If it were, I'd be certainly looking to address it. And if anything that comes up during our investigations that causes us to think that is the case, then we'll absolutely work to highlight that. I hope that helps.
Yeah,
thank you.
Just to come back, convener, just very briefly, if that's okay.
On you go.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Ritchie. That's reassuring. And I'm just thinking of maybe kind of quite vulnerable residents who perhaps have misinterpreted something online or, you know, just inputted information that, you know, they've maybe misunderstood what's been asked. Do you then follow up in a case like that where you think actually there's something not right here? Do you go out, does or your team go out and meet face to face just to then get a picture and a feel for what some of those vulnerabilities might be?
Okay, well, again, thanks for the question. We haven't recently had any such meetings or any such particular suspicions, but I'd be very keen to deal with them when they came up. I'd be absolutely keen to do that. I think at the moment we do sort of bulk council tax work that shows persons who have received discounts or other allowances that they shouldn't have done, and these accounts are corrected and rebuild. A lot of maybe some of the times we don't hear the story behind that and simply rebuild. But any time there was, if there was anything more to any of those cases or any other investigation, I'd be absolutely keen to know all about it in order that we could make the necessary improvements, because I think that's very important.
Yeah. Thank you. That's reassuring.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Any comments on this report? Not seeing any. Okay. Well, we've been asked to scrutinise this one, which we have done. So thanks for the report and thanks for your contribution on this item. We'll move on to item 10, which is the Internal Audit Activity Report, and that's back to Cathy Wiley again.
Thank you, Convener. This is the usual report with the update on where we are with the plan from the last time that we were in committee, and also where we are with the implementation of the agreed actions for either internal audit or indeed the counter fraud actions that have also been agreed. We've also got some other information, and I'll deal with the other pieces of information first before I come to the general update that we usually have. The first thing that we have is an update on where we are with the action plan for the global internal audit standards. We did talk about this action plan at a previous meeting, and we are on target to have all of this complete by the end of March, with some of it to be done in June when we do the annual reporting next year. At the moment, we've got 4 actions complete and 2 that can't be completed until we get to June next year. But I'm happy to discuss any of those actions that are in the appendix if anyone has any questions about them. I'm quite comfortable that we are, as I said, on target to get these done in time to be compliant by the time we get to the end of this year. The other one is just to bring you up to date. We have a vacancy within the internal audit team. We're now through the recruitment process. We're just waiting for the final checks to be done around that recruitment, and we're hoping that the new person will be able to start with us at the beginning of January. And the final thing just to bring to your attention was that we've had some correspondence from the Chief Executive of the Scottish Police Authority, just giving us notice that they are reviewing the strategic plan for Scotland, with a new plan being put together now for 2026 to 2029. Officers have had an opportunity to give some feedback into that planning process, and there should be a draft plan coming out for wide consultation during the winter of 2025-26. So it's just to give you that heads up that will be coming out shortly. If we move on now to the actual audit planning, the audit plan. We've got 3 things that we're reporting today: the continuous auditing for payroll and for duplicate payments and creditors. And we've also got one of the internal audits that we've undertaken as well. So I'm just scrolling through to get to the right page. So in terms of the continuous auditing, we have July to September for payroll, which is comprehensive assurance. We had 3 of the top 10 salary payments that we investigated for this period, and all of those were explained satisfactorily. In terms of the duplicate payments for creditors, we identified 3 in this period, totalling £836. 2 of those had already been identified and reclaimed by the service, and the further one was a refund was requested once it had been identified from the audit work. Final piece of work that we're reporting today is the purchase ledger invoice processing and authorisation through care and aftercare in children, families and justice. This is the final piece of work. We've done this piece of work across a number of services, and this is the final one to be reported today. This one has limited assurance, and there are 10 recommendations that have been agreed with the service to improve the procedures that are in place and how these are recorded and adhered to by people who are responsible. We have made some recommendations for changing these procedures as well to try and make this work flow better. We did identify some under and overpayments during the audit, and these have been investigated. The service has been really good in reacting to the findings from this audit, and we already have 4 of the actions that have been agreed that have been implemented. So that's been a really positive result. And that flows through to the final piece of information that I'm reporting here, which is around the actions that have been implemented. We've got 30 outstanding actions at the 17th of November in comparison to, I think it was 47 the previous time we reported. And that's down to the fact that a lot of actions have been implemented quickly. And there were also some actions that were replicated across a number of services that have all been implemented since the last time we reported, which is another reason for the good results that we've got at the moment in terms of action implementation. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Cathy. Really comprehensive covering as always. I wanted to scoot forward to the progress on the plan from page 191 onwards. And you said you're confident everything's on track. And we've obviously heard there are sort of staffing pressures in the system, really. And what level of confidence do you have that you will get the support you need from the teams to engage with to carry out these audits when capacity is a big issue for everyone? Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been an issue for us. We've talked about this in my annual report for at least the last 2, if not 3 years, and it does continue to be an issue sometimes with us managing to get information from people. We know that services are sometimes struggling to be able to respond to us within the timeframes that we would like. We work with the services to try and plan the audits to put them into timeframes where they are the most convenient, if you like, for them. And we do work with them during the process of the audit. We can start planning new audits if we have to wait for information to allow us to finish other audits. I'm reasonably confident. I know that the plan at the moment looks a bit light on things being finalised, but we are quite far through some of the others in terms of the work, and we have one really large piece of work that we've been undertaking which has delayed others. But we're now at the point where we've got a draft report which is just going through our own checking, and it will be going out to the service very soon. And that will free up that auditor to be able to go on with some other work. So I can say confidently that we will not finish everything in the plan before we get to June, but I'm confident that we will have finished a sufficient amount of it for me to be able to provide the it's called a conclusion now, not an opinion, but it's basically the same information as I've done previously, and that we will be able to get through what will be a reasonable amount of the plan before we end the year.
Thanks, Cathy.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
And just to say also that I do have really good support from CLT in terms of being able to move things forward when that's needed. So yeah, I'm sure everybody is doing their best to just get through the work for the audit as they can.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Any comments? Okay, well, thanks very much, Cathy. It's good to see that the number of sort of action points has been reduced, because that's always something that we look at. That's good to hear. Okay, so we are asked here to consider and note the update on progress with the planned internal audit work, note the position with implementations of agreed audit and counter-fraud actions, notes the position with implementation of the GIAS UK Public Sector Conformance Plan, note that the recruitment process for the vacancy is in progress, and note the notification regarding the development of future consultation on the strategic policy plan for Scotland. So we noted all of those. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 11, which is the annual complaints report, and I'll hand over to Alison Watson.
Thank you, Convener. This annual report provides an overview of complaints received by Angus Council for the period 1st April to 31st of March this year. By reviewing complaints received, we aim to prevent issues recurring, and the report provides examples of learning undertaken and service improvements made. The report includes information on the types of complaints received, how quickly they've been dealt with, and how many were resolved, upheld, not upheld, and partially upheld. We also report how many complaints were considered by the Scottish Public Services Ombudsman following anyone not being content with the response directly from the Council, and in this regard 17 cases were received by the SPSO in the reporting period. 16 of these were closed off and not upheld, and one was not pursued for investigation. There's further detail provided in the report at Appendix 1, and committee is asked to note the contents of the report. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Devine. Councillor MacDonald.
I suppose I'll maybe need to raise a late statement of transparency because I've just thought of this question and it might detail it. I work for Mary Goujon as per my MSP, the Angus North Midlands MSP, as per my register of interest. In terms of the annual complaints performance report, does it factor in complaints received from MSPs and MPs? And also, does it take in, or is there any way it takes in the issues raised by elected members that maybe haven't gone through the official channels, but will have been flagged to officers in the way that they do their work?
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. So the inquiries that are from from MSPs and MPs are not included as complaints unless they're obviously come directly from the constituents. So where they've come from the constituents as complaints, we often then get follow-up requests from members of Parliament or Scottish Parliament. Yes, and we do have a separate tracker where we keep, a count of the number of inquiries from MPs, MSPs, and the timescales to respond to them. So whilst that is separate from complaints, there are often linkages. A complaint is being dealt with, and is then, information is asked for from the MSP MP.
Executive wants to interject.
Thank you very much. Just to supplement my colleague's response there. So as Alison says, we also track all inquiries received from MPs and MSPs and our response rates and timescales and the themes that are emerging from those. So there has been quite significant growth over a period of time, but we've kind of moved back to kind of 2021 levels of correspondence at this time. So regularly directorates will review themes arising from that, and sometimes they are similar to complaint themes and sometimes they're quite distinct and different. So just for your assurance that we do regularly explore the key trends arising. Thank you.
Supplementary.
In terms of elected, us councillors as elected members, we might potentially be bypassing that recording system if we're going directly to officers. Should we be flagging up complaints and telling our residents that we serve to potentially raise a formal complaint, or should we track that ourselves and feed in, or are officers recording the sort of issues that we're highlighting? Because we could look at the data here and we could see maybe a trend, and we're thinking, oh, we're going great in housing, but actually elected members have maybe raised 60% more housing queries or complaints, and we've just not maybe followed that. Now, I'm sure we'd pick that up, but you get the example, yeah?
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Yeah, I would say that usually when, obviously we're made aware of issues by elected members, but quite often it will be already logged as a complaint and you're supporting that constituent in sort of advocating for them or finding out information on that complaint, but usually it will have been recorded as a complaint within the system. There might be occasions where that's not the case and you're aware, so absolutely if you do feel that a constituent should be raising it as a complaint, then encourage them to do that. But I think usually it would be within our complaint system if we're aware of it. So if a councillor makes us aware of a situation, we will usually then take that forward through our complaints handling process. As I say, if you feel that's not being done, then certainly you can suggest that they may wish to do that.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Speed and then Councillor.
Yeah, thanks. It was just in relation to the increase in times to respond to complaints. I know that that's gone up. And I would imagine that it's due to a combination of factors, such as maybe more complex cases and investigations are taking a bit longer, but as well as kind of staff capacity. I just wondered what perhaps measures are being put in place to try and address the time issue, the timing issue.
Thank you, Convener. So we are finding that we do have a lot more complex complaints that we're dealing with. I'd also highlight that similar is happening with FOI requests and environmental information requests that we're receiving. So we have seen whilst an increase numerically, there's also been an increase in the complexity of those FOI requests. So it is a trend that we're seeing across the board. So certainly there is greater complexity, and I know that the information reported to committee shows quite an average time period to respond to a stage 2 complaint, longer than the SPSO guidance dictates, but I would say that that is due to the complexity of certain complaints. I'd also say that during this reporting period, we've had a number of specific incidents. We had Storm Babette and other storms that then resulted in quite a few complaints and concerns around roads, flooding and so on. So within this particular reporting period, there was a peak, if you like, in the number of complaints received. So I think that has all contributed to that increase in the time taken. But certainly it is given a priority across the council in terms of responding to complaints and trying to keep within the SPSO guidelines. And if we're not able to, or if the complaint is particularly complex, then making sure that we are in touch with the complainer just to advise them of that, the complexity, or that it might take a bit longer than just keeping them informed is really important, and is what we encourage services to do. And also just to say that at CLT we do have feedback when the reporting is done to Scrutiny and Audit Committee, and as part of the performance reporting we do look at complaints and the team making sure that these are closed off and dealt with. So yeah, it is given a priority, and then looking at the learning and feedback from the complaints as well.
Thank you. Councillor Devine.
Well, it was a similar question, in fact, but I was looking at the fact that we seem to be much worse than our family group. And I would have thought that they also have quite complex difficulties as well. So just wondered if you've seen why we just seem to be dealing a bit more slowly with these ones, the stage 2.
Thank you. Yes, and we thought it was quite helpful. This is the first time we've put the family group 3, so that's of the Complaints Handlers Forum, as it says in the report. So just doing a comparison that we thought was quite helpful. But yeah, in terms of the working days, we were sitting at 56.9 and the family group is 26.5. So I think probably just the specifics of what we've had to deal with, but totally take on board your point that, looking at why it's that. And I know that Elaine Whittet, who's a member of the Complaints Handlers Forum, is certainly looking to get some more information from that forum, and to look to see that we can improve on that and the times. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Any comments? Councillor Bell and Councillor Speed. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I was hoping to end on a positive. I know I nagged for ages to get compliments put in the reporting. I think they're really important that they're in there, and I'm really appreciative of the people who spend the time to submit positive comments for council services. I often feel that online the council's quite beleaguered by all the keyboard warriors who have rarely a good thing to say about the council, and every day people turn up and do their best in some really challenging circumstances. So I think it's really important that our workforce sees those helpful remarks. And I attended a community resilience practical session on Sunday, the fire station in Forfar, run by one of our communities officers, and the community groups involved in that were so grateful for the council convening that kind of activity and helping them build up their own resilience. So thanks for including that. Thank you.
Yes, it's always good to keep a balance between complaints and compliments. I think it's good to record both. Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thank you. It was just in relation to one of the kind of complaint scenarios, case studies that was given, and it was a housing one, and it was the issue in terms of the migration from one system to another. And I guess it just really kind of highlights the example I was given on the last report in terms of fraud, and just that there can be issues in terms of our systems and our processes and when things switch, and that kind of highlights that there can be challenges. So I think it is just an area that we need to closely monitor when things change from one system to another, that there can be digital errors occur as well as human mistakes made.
Okay, thank you. No further comments. So we're just asked to note the contents of this report, which we have done. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 12, which is the last item, and that's the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Scotland Act 2000, and that's back to Alison Watson.
Thank you, Convener. So this report advises members of the use of surveillance powers by the Council under RIPSA. And the committee is asked to note that 2 authorisations were granted for surveillance in the reporting quarter. Obviously, due to the nature of the covert surveillance, I wouldn't be at liberty to tell you what those were for, but as per the best practice guidance, we are required to report this to Scrutiny and Audit Committee, and the report asks members to note that 2 authorisations were granted. Thank you.
Given that comment, I don't think there's any point asking for questions or comments. We are noting that report. Thank you. Okay, that concludes the business today. Thanks very much for your attendance and your participation, and to all officers who participated. Thank you.